Welcome to Inside Monster Jam, powered by Lucas Oil, the official Monster Jam podcast. I'm Scott Jordan. When we debuted this show a few years back, one of the biggest topics fans want to hear about is track design and construction, and we're going to handle that today. And to help me dive into that process, there's no one better than to start the conversation than to welcome back Monster Jam's Senior Director of Global Operations, Jamie Dulsing. Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Feel like you've been here so many times that you're now the new face of MAP TV. So it's great to see you again.
Taking over. Look out.
I appreciate it. I'll let you slide in. So let's start with Monster Jam in the past before we look ahead to the future and the present as well. Tracks obviously vastly different now. Monster Jam tracks were not as consistent as they are now back in the day. I remember watching on TV, we'd see a lot of straight line racing over cars, but I know there were different intricacies back then. So when did the conversation start to come into play about evolving these tracks into being a little more consistent as to what we see today?
Yeah, it was a big evolution. Everybody, who's watched Monster Jam over the years has kind of seen that evolution. But, 10, 12 years ago when we started more Monster Jam and started Triple Threat, those type of technical events, we really needed some consistency out of the tracks. So that really helped us kind of focus in on making a more technical track. And then as we started to develop the series, in stadiums and arenas, as the years went on, it really proved out that having a technical track that they could perfect every single week helped perfect their craft and help perfect our events as we moved on throughout the year.
I know that you, when you took over as the Senior Director of Global Operations, you had a vision for a lot of things in the company. You've taken it to new heights. Has your vision been realized so far as to what you wanted these tracks to become?
Yeah, I think it's been a great group collaboration between everybody on trying to, have a dream and make a dream come true. But, honestly, I think we think so far outside the box all the time that our dreams still aren't there, right? We've knocked a few of our check boxes off. Definitely the over-under track was a huge one for us. We tried to develop that thing for about 3 years until it was actually perfected. We have a lot more in our pocket that we're willing to take a look at. World Finals alone, starting in the stands, things like those that, we really hadn't thought of in the past. Really just trying to break ground, make new stuff.
And fans always are so excited about World Finals track. And I know they have a lot to say on social media and in the message groups about it. When World Finals comes around, is it something that you look at that and say, okay, how can we top ourselves this year? Is there any type of pressure there to give the fans something they haven't seen before?
I can't even explain the amount of pressure that's there, especially for World Finals. Our series tracks alone are very intricate, and we try to put the best into them because that's our biggest product that we put out there as far as amount of times you'll see it. But World Finals has just a completely different level. The amount of stress and the amount of meetings that we go through to try to perfect and try to do something outside the box, man. When Scott and Dan and Dan's group are, we're all sitting in a room, the big committee is sitting there. It's really just diving into all of the history of Monster Jam World Finals. What have we done? What can we do in the future? But, now that we're moving Monster Jam World Finals around, we got to take into that other aspect of it. What can we fit in there? What can we do? Can we put the track in the stands? Can we do an over-under? Things like that doesn't always, come in first into mind when other people are thinking about tracks. But it's incredibly difficult to put together and be original.
I know you have your hand in everything with the company. As far as track design goes, how much input do you have from the time that the talks start to what we actually see the drivers on throughout the season?
Yeah, it really depends on what event we're looking at. World Finals, me and the committee that, of Scott and Dan that'll come up next. We all sit in the room from the very get-go and start to take a look at different ideas that are thrown on the table. So those are very, very deep. As far as the series ones, usually the team will come together with a couple ideas, and then we'll sit together and kind of perfect them after that. So I have a lot of fun, and the other group will kind of attest to that. It's a lot of fun to sit in the room and we draw it up on the whiteboard, and some things come out and some things don't. The greatest idea will be put out there, and then we'll come up with a reason why it can't really work. And there's a ton of those out there, different angles and finish lines, and trying to make it competitive for everybody is definitely key.
So that's where this literally starts, is on a whiteboard, just drawing and trying to figure out what is going to be the best thing to put out there.
Yeah, that, and we take suggestions from fans. We've gotten a lot of good ones over the years. Scott Alinsky does a great job of looking through the history too, and,
Yeah.
and really pulling out some old ideas that might come up new, and that's a lot of fun too. What might not have worked in the past might work now with the new technology in the trucks and the way the drivers drive, and some of the ideas that we have with tracks.
And I want to reiterate what you just said. I'm going to look in the camera and talk to everybody. They listen to the fans. He literally just said, you take ideas from the fans, because that was a big question is will you listen to the fans? And we do that, I think, in more ways than anybody could possibly imagine here. So it's great that you take some of those ideas. Let's talk about safety before I let you go, because safety, the number one priority, safety of not only the drivers, but fans and staff, everybody involved. I know safety has been a big proponent as far as these evolutions go and where the track sits. So how much of that is the conversation, or does that start the conversation?
Yeah, we try to start with creativity, because you try to do creativity without any barriers, and that's the way it has to start. And then once you whittle down to this idea might fit in the track, then you have to start thinking about safety number one. So obviously our safety holes that we have to put into consideration, driver safety was number one thing when we started talking about an over under. Like, that was the biggest thing that we had to figure out. How do we make this safe enough for a truck to jump over another truck and for us to come out successful in the end? So it's key, not only in World Finals, but in our arena tracks and the stadium tracks that we're putting out there
You
too.
also have to take into account that over under in a monsoon in Orlando as well, and how that affects it.
Yeah, and that actually went into part of the thought process too, right? I think the 2 days before that, we actually watered down that track as much as we could to see how it would react in the rain, and luckily, we were able to pull off some successful tests, and good thing we did.
It was a lot of fun that night. Real quick before I let you go, you said your vision's not quite over yet. Any elements that you may be looking forward to implementing in the tracks, or is that all going to be a surprise for when some of these things are unveiled?
Yeah, there's a lot of surprises out there, and again, we do listen to the fans, and I think they're thinking a lot of things that we think too. So, we love the ideas of side by side racing or rhythm racing, and again, these are all like very out there ideas, but we love those kind of ideas. What's out there that we aren't doing right now?
All right, Jamie, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Jamie Dulsing, everybody. Coming up next, Dan Allen, Scott Olinsky will be here to help us dive even more into track design and construction. Stay right where you are, and more Inside Monster Jam is next. Welcome back to Inside Monster Jam, powered by Lucas Oil. I'm Scott Jordan. This week we are talking about track design and construction, and I am joined right now by the Senior Director of Track Design and Construction, Mr. Dan Allen, and of course the Director of Stadium Operations, Scott Olinsky, back to join the show. Thanks for joining me. And Dan, you've been an enigma for me. I've been trying to get you on the show for a few years now, so thanks for taking time out of your day, man. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
So Monster Jam fans worldwide know that this gentleman to my left is just as famous as some of the drivers. They wait for him after the events for pictures and bombard your social media. But Dan, some fans may know your name, may not know your face, or vice versa. Let's talk about your background and how you got here to Feld Entertainment.
Well, I don't have a story much different than others, except I do go very far back and worked my way from the bottom to the top, I would say. I grew up on a farm upstate New York, so I have a lot of dirt background. And I was a professional ATV racer, which then transcended into some of us in a group got together and created Quad Wars, which was a big staple in the Monster Jam business for a while. And then after college, I was like, what am I going to be, an accountant, sit behind a desk every day? And so that was the transitional into working for the promoter I raced for and was a star for. And then worked my way through the ranks of event manager, tour managers, and directed the TNN television series all the way to director of operations and now senior director of track construction.
So Scott, you've been a tour manager as well, and that's where you were when I started here. When we talk about designing these tracks, and Jamie, opened up the process a little bit and took us behind the scenes. But as a tour manager, you know the intricacies that it takes to conduct a Monster Jam event. You know what to look for. So how much of that and of your experience in that role do you look for when it comes to building these tracks for the following season?
So there's a lot of it. As Jamie mentioned, that I'm a big fan of the history of tracks. So I love going back and looking at the old tracks that we used to run and seeing how we could potentially implement them into today. But then also being a tour manager previously, having that relationship with the drivers where I can go up to them and, kind of ask what they think that would be cool to run in the future, or what might be interesting and intriguing for them to create a course that's challenging, but then also exciting for the drivers.
And Dan, as far as once you agree on a design, so let's first talk about the two different stadiums, because we have two different tracks when it comes to Stadium Championship Series East and West. So how much of a difference do you like to put into these stadium tours to make them different, to make the competition exclusive for those fans that are coming out?
Well, like Jamie and Scott mentioned, it's all about the fans, right? And we want the ultimate entertainment experience for them. And so I think in the end, when you're also watching the shows on television, you don't want the same track everywhere, right? So initially we wanted some diverse tracks just because, it gives different opportunity for drivers to show off different skills. The ultimate goal was really the fan experience and giving the drivers something to strive for and who can win on any given Saturday.
And once the design process is over, then it becomes a matter of logistically, how do you build the tracks, correct? So when that starts to factor in and you start to plan that, how much goes into actually building a track for week one?
There's a lot. So, as Jamie alluded to, we have the committee that kind of plans everything with the track. So Dan, Jamie, I, and then the rest of the track construction team will kind of sit together, come up with the track that works, send it to the simulator to make sure that, particular angles are going to work. And then again, checking back with Dan to make sure A, they have enough dirt, and B, they're going to have enough time to put it into any given venue. And then on the loading out, whether it's Supercross coming in or another event that has to come in right behind us.
And we'll get to that in a little bit. But as far as the simulator goes, do drivers run the created track on a simulator, or you just push it through to make sure that there's everything is good to go and clean before you start building?
So right now we push it through just to make sure that everything runs through. But we're working on, some potential new ideas that we can send out to the drivers to see if a certain ramp is going to work, or, a different element.
Let's talk briefly about arena tracks, because we know the stadiums have big, wide open floors, so you can put some different nuances in there, some different landmines, so to speak, for that. But arenas, you have the pod and the smaller floors. Are there any little intricacies, little differences between, let's say, an Arena West Series track to an Arena East Series track, or does it vary based on the size of the venue?
The size of the venue definitely determines, whether it's timed racing or whether it's round racing. The weather plays a big part, right? Sometimes you have very soft, spongy dirt. Other places we have just really good quality dirt versus other markets. So that alone adds to sometimes trucks catch and tip up, or they have to really work at racing rather than a really solid floor that they can just pin it to win it, right? But then, as Jamie mentioned earlier, with the technical part of it, like the old school with crushed cars and those types of things, we now have integrated what we call our, mechanical ramps, right? And so we have pipes and tires, and those types of things now last through the entirety of a show. So the first guy that he doesn't have a very good ramp versus the last guy that after it deteriorated. So I think we strived very hard to create a racetrack that would withstand the duration of an event. Right. So everyone had the same opportunity from beginning to end. And then your final answer on the tracks, yes, we do tweak them. We have shortened ramps to get bigger pop. We've created some corners now to help trucks bicycle or do nose poppers. We're moving like the tops of the wheelie bumps, the popper bumps, to help aid the drivers and wherever they're at to put on the best show for the fans.
It's fascinating stuff. This is what you've been waiting for. We're giving it to you, and stay right where you are. More with Dan and Scott next on Inside Monster Jam, powered by Lucas Oil. Welcome back to Inside Monster Jam, powered by Lucas Oil. I'm joined right now by Scott Olinsky and Dan Allen as we talk about track design and construction. Dan, you brought up dirt being a factor in these tracks and whether it's cold dirt or the affecting how the track is put together. So let's talk about the dirt because it's a big question that fans have: is where does the dirt come from? So where do we usually keep that laying around? I know every stadium is different, every arena is different, but I think fans sometimes expect to come to an event maybe on a Monday and see a pound of dirt just lying there.
You would think, as you just alluded to, laying around. I wish it was that easy. Everybody walks and looks outside their house, and you think dirt is dirt, but it's not, right? And so some can be full of brick and debris, and obviously safety for our fans are our number one concern. So we're striving to always find dirt that is conducive to a race surface, but also free of debris. So we actually own most of our assets in every major city, stadium, and arena, and we store it so that we can either keep it dry or we know in the weather. We are very shackled with, Mother Nature, the contracts, and trying to still put on the biggest, best, creative, entertaining show for Monster Jam that we can put on.
And it is a process to get the dirt in and to get it out. And I do want to talk about some of these venues are very, rightfully so, very territorial about their dirt, whether it's a baseball field, a football field, a hockey rink, a basketball court, even to the point where, I'm going to point out Miami, the baseball stadium, or the Marlins. I have never seen a team so concerned about the status of their field. But let's talk about how that impacts what you do when it comes to, bringing dirt in and where you put the track.
Yeah, so it obviously varies from venue to venue depending on what you're playing underneath. Some places like Glendale, you're right under concrete, so it's a lot easier. Some places like Miami, where you're playing over live field, it's a little more intricate. So in a normal standard setting, Dan's team is arriving on a Monday to start processing the pile, whether it's right outside the stadium or maybe a mile or two down the road. And then Tuesday, they're preparing inside the stadium. So they're putting down protection on the field to protect whether it's field, turf, whatever that may be, and then loading in that dirt starting on Wednesday. And that's usually a 2-day process to start building the track. So then he can hand it over to my team to practice and then paint the track for the event for the weekend. And then on the out, they move a lot quicker on the out than the in because, like Dan said, these venues have other events lined up. So we have 12, 14 hours sometimes to get out and completely clean that venue before the next event rolls in.
Let's talk about Supercross and Monster Jam. You have Angel Stadium, which is a hotbed for both sports. Let's say you have a Supercross event there one weekend, Monster Jam coming in the next weekend. What is that process like to change over the track for the two sports?
Truthfully, internally, for my dirt crews, we work together well because they're all my guys. So Supercross tries to pile up all the jumps and leave it in a very close approximate location to where Monster Jam needs it, and vice versa. So where we really get hit is Mother Nature. If we have to run Monster Jam, like specifically last weekend in Anaheim, and there were 2 rain mud events, and so there's not much left to leave Supercross behind, and then if you don't get a sunny day to dry it out and fix it, it's just a scramble for everyone. So inside, it's about like where do you hide the mud? How do you get the mud back out to bring in dry? There's a lot that we need to go through to protect the venue, our racetrack, our the amount of money that Feld puts into field protection, all of that, and at the same time get on to the next venue because that crew had to get to San Diego to do that Monster Jam after it rained on Supercross. So yeah, long story short, it can be miserable sometimes, although we love what we do.
Gives you some headaches, so right?
A couple.
Stay right where you guys. More Inside Monster Jam powered by Lucas Oil's coming up right after this. We are back with more Inside Monster Jam powered by Lucas Oil. This week, I'm joined by Scott Olinsky and Dan Allen as we talk all things track design and construction. It's time to get to your fan questions. You can send them in each week on Instagram at Scott Jordan MJSX. And I'm going to point out Green Joe Buff here on Instagram, but this was a big question that I got, and it's all about crush cars, and it seems to be the question of the day every time we talk about this. But he's asking, is there a chance of bringing back buses and more crush cars? We did see some of those elements come back into play in Nashville, but what are your thoughts on that?
For me personally, we love the buses and cars, but in the end, I can tell you after talking to numerous drivers, I mean, back in the day, even Tom Mentz and Dennis Anderson and all the duels they had, they would always go last.
Yeah.
And as the first guy went and every side of the car and bus was sharp and they could get great air, and then you watched after truck after truck after truck, that track just got beat down and beat down and beat down. And Dennis is like, I got nothing left. Like, I went out there and drove like a madman, pin it to win it everywhere, and then flip, because that's all he had left. So what we did is we transitioned over to a lot more dirt because the jumps withstand all that punishment from racing and skills through freestyle over and over and over. And it also allowed us to be able to go from each discipline, and then we could push up a ramp that was there for two-wheel to now use for freestyle to get bigger, better air. So I wouldn't say it was that we were trying to take away all that excitement and car crushing from our fans. It's that we can actually produce a better, entertaining show and let the drivers be the drivers and the trucks be the trucks, because the track didn't go away.
So we didn't take them away just to make the fans upset.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Again, I deliver the news and I'm right all the time. Scott, what are your thoughts on the crush cars and buses? Because you've been around for many years and you've seen the tracks evolve, and you're the one as a tour manager, and Dan, you as well. But you got to be there to pick up the debris and to get them out of the stadiums. Talk about your thoughts on those.
Yeah, I think, as Dan said, we love them. We love having them in there. It's a nice addition to a track. I think they're almost like a special attraction now. As you mentioned, World Finals, we had them at the Superstar Challenge, and it's great to see in the special element. We have crush cars built into the tracks now, which is cool. But I love the consistency that the tracks provide for the drivers to be able to see whether you're first out in freestyle or last out in freestyle, that track's going to be the same. But I do love bringing in those special crushable elements as a special attraction every now and then.
We got just a few seconds left here. Any chance we can see something different? I asked Jamie this and he was a little vague about it. Any chance we can see something different for World Finals this year than we've seen in the past?
I think you'll see something different. Okay. I really do.
Everybody's always asking. That's why as soon as I announce I'm bringing you on, that's the question. World Finals, can we see the track? What about you, Dan? Thoughts on that? You like being innovative with this stuff?
Well, as much glass as there is in SoFi Stadium, I can assure you there won't be a start line up in the stands.
Okay.
I don't know how to traverse a monster truck through glass suites. So we will have to go and be as creative as humanly possible to try and make the coolest, best track on the floor itself.
I'm looking forward to it. Dan, Scott, thank you so much. That's all the time we have. I'll see you right here next time on Inside Monster Jam, powered by Lucas Oil.